The bolt of Sergeant Tanaka's Arisaka slides forward with the sound it has made 10,000 times in training. A smooth, oiled click. He chambers the round, exhales, and squeezes. The crack echoes across the clearing. He works the bolt again, brass tinkling onto the jungle floor. Click forward, click back. 1 round every 3 seconds if he's fast, every 4 if he's careful. Across the stream, the American doesn't work a bolt at all. Blam, 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 blam. 8 rounds in 2 seconds. The metallic ping of the ejecting clip. 3 seconds later, blam, 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 blam. Tanaka presses himself into the mud. The math is simple and terrible. By the time he fires his second shot, the American has already fired 16. Sergeant Kiyoshi Tanaka is 24 years old, from a farming village outside Hiroshima, where his family grows rice and radishes. He joined the Imperial Army in 1940, a dutiful son answering the Emperor's call. His father gave him a photograph before he left. Mother and 3 sisters standing outside their home, cherry blossoms in bloom. The photo lives in a waterproof pouch inside his tunic, next to his heart. It's August 1943, and he's been on Bougainville for 6 weeks. Private First Class Ichiro Yamada, 19 from Tokyo, carries Tanaka's squad's Type 96 light machine gun. Back home, he worked in his uncle's print shop, setting type for newspapers. His hands still bear the calluses. He jokes that he went from setting characters to setting ammunition belts, though nobody laughs much anymore. He shares a foxhole with Corporal Hiroshi Nakamura, 22, a fisherman's son from Hokkaido, who can identify American aircraft by engine sound alone. Their rifles are Type 38s, 40-year-old bolt-action designs firing 6.5mm cartridges. Tanaka knows every millimeter of his rifle, the weight of the bolt, the resistance of the trigger, the way moisture swells the wood stock in this godforsaken humidity. It's accurate to 400 meters, maybe 500 if you're skilled, and the target stands still. The rifle has served the Emperor well in China, in Manchuria, against enemies who carried similar weapons. But the Americans, they've been told, are different. The jungle base occupies a ridgeline overlooking a coastal track the Americans use to move supplies north from their beachhead. Battalion Command calls it a strategic position. The men call it hell. Morning mist never burns off entirely. Everything is damp: uniforms, ammunition, skin. Tanaka's boots rotted through 3 weeks ago. He wraps his feet in torn parachute silk, changes the wrappings twice daily to prevent jungle rot. They live on rice balls, dried fish, and whatever they can forage. Supply lines broke down weeks ago. Water comes from a stream that runs brown with sediment. Yamada boils it when they can risk a fire, which isn't often. American aircraft own the sky. The men learn to freeze at the sound of engines, to recognize the difference between a reconnaissance corsair making lazy circles and a hunter looking for targets. At night, they whisper about home, about food, about the war. Nakamura talks about his fishing boat, how the mackerel runs silver in October. Yamada reads and rereads letters from a girl in Tokyo he met once at a dance. Tanaka doesn't talk much. As sergeant, he carries the weight of their survival. The Americans haven't pushed this far up the island yet, but patrols probe closer each day. Intelligence reports filter down from command, fragmented, sometimes contradictory. The Americans have new weapons, superior weapons. Each Marine and Army soldier carries a semi-automatic rifle. Their squad support weapons fire faster than anything the Emperor's forces possess. Tanaka doesn't entirely believe it. Propaganda, perhaps. Exaggeration to explain defeats. He's seen American prisoners. They're just men, after all, not Superman. They bleed like anyone. August 14th arrives hot and close. The jungle breathes moisture. Sentries report American movement along the coastal track at dawn. A patrol, maybe platoon strength, moving north. Tanaka gathers his squad. 15 men, though 3 are sick with dysentery and 1 with malaria. He posts them along the ridge in fighting positions they've prepared over weeks, shallow trenches concealed by foliage, interlocking fields of fire covering the trail below. The plan is simple. Let the Americans pass the first positions, then open fire from 3 sides. Classic ambush doctrine. Tanaka positions himself with the best sight line, Yamada and the Type 96 to his right. The light machine gun gives them 30 rounds between reloads, their ace in the hole. He checks his ammunition. 5-round stripper clips lined up in neat rows. 60 rounds total. Every man knows his sector, his target. They've rehearsed this. In China, such ambushes worked perfectly. The American patrol appears at 8:30. Tanaka counts 12 men, moving in a loose column. They look comfortable, almost casual. No one hurries. Their uniforms are cleaner than any Japanese soldier has worn in months. They carry their weapons with the ease of men who have plenty of ammunition to practice with. Tanaka watches through the foliage. Waits. The lead American passes his position. Second man. Third. The trigger finger tightens. Everything balances on the edge of this moment. At precisely 0847 on August 14, 1943, Sergeant Tanaka fires the first shot. Everything changes. Tanaka's shot hits the 4th Marine in the column, a clean shot, center mass. The Marine staggers. But before Tanaka can work his bolt, before he can eject the spent casing and chamber a fresh round, the jungle explodes with American fire. Not the measured crack, crack, crack of bolt actions, not even the sustained burr of their Type 96. Something else. Something that sounds like cloth tearing, like a wall of sound, with no gaps between shots. The M1 Garands open up together. Blam, 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 blam. 8 shots from each rifle in the time it takes Tanaka to fire twice. The Americans don't aim carefully, don't squeeze off single shots. They point and unleash sheets of lead. The man next to Tanaka, young Private Sato, jerks backward, 3 holes stitched across his chest before he can fire a single round. Tanaka works his bolt frantically. Click forward, aims, fires, click back, click forward, another round. His training takes over, muscle memory from 10,000 repetitions. But it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. For every round he chambers, the Americans send back 8. Then the bar opens up. Yamada gets his Type 96 into action, the light machine gun chattering its 30-round burst. For a moment, Tanaka feels hope. This is what they needed, sustained fire to pin the Americans down. The bar answers. It's deeper than the Garands, heavier. Brop, brop, brop. Not individual shots, but a continuous roar, like ripping canvas, like the sky splitting open. 20 rounds in 3 seconds, 36 slugs punching through bamboo, through logs, through the foliage they thought was cover. The bark of the tree next to Tanaka's head explodes in splinters. He risks a glance. The American bar gunner stands in the open, weapon braced against his hip, firing in controlled bursts that walk across the ridgeline. Behind him, riflemen fan out, each one firing, firing, firing. They don't take cover and shoot. They shoot while moving to cover, suppressing, overwhelming, a wall of violence that doesn't stop. Yamada's machine gun falls silent. Tanaka looks right. Yamada slumps over his weapon, the belt of ammunition spilling into the dirt. Nakamura tries to grab the Type 96, but a burst from the bar catches him across the legs. He screams, high and thin. The mathematics are brutal and simple. Tanaka's squad of 15 men, with bolt-action rifles, can fire perhaps 40 rounds per minute if they're skilled and desperate. The Americans, 12 men, with their Garands and bar, can fire over 300 rounds in the same time. It's not a fight. It's an execution. Tanaka fires again. His round hits nothing but leaves. He works the bolt. His hands are shaking now, sweat stinging his eyes. Private Okada, 3 meters to his left, stands to run. The Garands catch him instantly. 8 rounds from one rifle, 8 from another. More than enough. Okada doesn't even complete his first step. The smell of cordite thickens the air, not just from Japanese positions, but from below, from the Americans who seem to have endless ammunition. They don't conserve rounds, don't measure their fire. They pour it out like water, suppressing every position, every hint of movement. Tanaka's clip runs empty. 5 rounds gone. He fumbles for another stripper clip, his hands slippery with sweat. The metal clips, designed for the cold climate of Manchuria, not this humid hell, stick together. He pries one free, pushes the rounds down into the magazine, works the bolt. 8 seconds. 8 seconds to reload 5 rounds. In those 8 seconds, the American nearest him fires, ejects his spent clip with that distinctive ping, slams in a fresh clip, and fires another 8 rounds. 16 shots to Tanaka's 0. Corporal Nakamura is still screaming, dragging himself backward with his arms, his shattered legs trailing. Tanaka wants to help him, wants to pull him to safety. But there is no safety. The American fire hasn't slackened. If anything, it's intensified. They're moving forward now, walking toward the Japanese positions, firing as they advance. One American, young, couldn't be more than 19, methodically shoots into each Japanese position. He doesn't expose himself carelessly, but he doesn't cower either. Blam, blam, blam into one position. Sidestep, blam, blam, blam into another. His rifle seems to never run empty, though Tanaka knows intellectually it must. The American just reloads too fast to see. Private Hashimoto brakes. He throws down his rifle and runs, crashing through the undergrowth. The bar finds him. The sound is terrible. The gun's roar and Hashimoto's cut-off cry blending together. When the gun stops, Hashimoto doesn't move again. Tanaka makes a decision. He signals retreat. The men who can still move do. 6 of them, crawling backward, using every scrap of cover. Behind them, the American fire continues, methodical, devastating. They're not wildly spraying bullets. They're systematically destroying every position, ensuring nothing lives. The photograph of his family presses against Tanaka's chest as he crawls. His rifle, his Type 38 that served so faithfully in China, feels like a relic from another age. A museum piece, a toy. 200 meters back, in secondary positions, Tanaka gathers the survivors. 6 men from 15, none unwounded. Nakamura died during the retreat, bled out in the undergrowth. Tanaka himself has shrapnel in his shoulder from a round that hit a rock and fragmented. They can still hear the Americans below, voices calling in English, the sound of equipment being redistributed. The Americans don't pursue immediately. They don't need to. They know what they've done. Tanaka checks his ammunition. 23 rounds left. The men together have perhaps 150 rounds total. Enough for one more engagement. One more losing fight against those terrible rifles. Private Yamamoto, the youngest survivor, is crying silently. Not from fear, Tanaka has seen enough combat to know the difference, but from understanding. They'd been taught that Japanese spirit would overcome American material advantages, that Bushido would prevail over cowardice, that their rifles, their training, their determination would be enough. The jungle whispers with the afternoon breeze. Somewhere below, an American lights a cigarette. Someone laughs. To them, it was a brief firefight, barely worth mentioning. To Tanaka's squad, it was annihilation. They spend the next 2 hours in a depression behind a fallen log, taking stock. 6 survivors from 15 men. 4 badly wounded, including Tanaka. The medical supplies ran out weeks ago. The best they can do is tear strips from the cleanest uniforms and bind wounds. Private Yamamoto has a through-and-through in his upper arm. The bullet, bigger than anything their Type 38 fires, tore a hole the size of a thumb. It missed the bone but shredded muscle. He won't fire a rifle again, not accurately. Lance Corporal Ito took shrapnel in his face and can't see from his right eye. Tanaka's shoulder throbs with each heartbeat. They bury nothing. The bodies lie where they fell. To retrieve them would mean returning to the kill zone, and none of them can face that. Tanaka knows the Americans will take photographs, will count the bodies, will file reports about another successful ambush broken. The numbers will become statistics. Killed in action, 9. Weapons captured, 9 Type 30 rifles, 1 Type 96 LMG. What the numbers won't show, Yamada's letters from Tokyo, never to be answered. The fishing boat in Hokkaido that Nakamura will never sail again. The print shop in Tokyo missing its apprentice. The rice farmers in Hiroshima who will receive a wooden box with ashes and a notification of honor. That night, in a new position 3 kilometers inland, the survivors don't talk much. What is there to say? They'd done everything right. Perfect ambush position, good fields of fire, numerical advantage for the first 30 seconds. None of it mattered. Yamamoto finally speaks. His voice is hollow. They didn't even take cover. It's true. The Americans had scattered, yes. Found positions, yes. But they'd never stopped firing. Not once. They'd shot while moving, shot while advancing, shot while their buddies reloaded. The volume of fire never dropped. With their bolt actions, Japanese doctrine called for one man to fire while others loaded. But someone was always not shooting. The Americans never stopped shooting. Ito, his face wrapped in bandages, says what they're all thinking. We can't win against that. Not with these. He gestures at his Type 38, leaning against a tree. The rifle suddenly looks ancient, inadequate. A weapon from another war. Tanaka says nothing. As a sergeant, he should offer encouragement, remind them of duty and honor. But he keeps seeing that American kid, 19 years old, walking forward while firing. The casual confidence of someone who knows his weapon gives him overwhelming advantage. Who knows that for every round Tanaka fires, he can fire 8. Over the next week, reports filter through from other units. 3rd Company, ambushed on the coast road, same result. 13 dead, 4 survivors. 5th Company, caught in the open during a patrol, wiped out to a man. The Americans are pushing north, not with banzai charges or grand maneuvers, but with systematic violence. They find Japanese positions and obliterate them with firepower. Battalion command issues new directives: avoid open engagement, use night infiltration. Close quarters where American firepower advantage is negated. The words are different, but the meaning is clear. We cannot win direct firefights. Tanaka learns more from a wounded lieutenant evacuated from another engagement. The Americans aren't just better armed at the rifle level. Their squad tactics revolve around that bar. The squad supports it, protects it, uses it as an anchor point. Where Japanese doctrine relies on individual marksmanship and spiritual strength, American doctrine relies on overwhelming volumes of accurate fire. The lieutenant mentions something else, too. The Americans are testing a new weapon, a smaller semi-automatic carbine for officers and vehicle crews. More semi-automatics, as if they needed more advantages. Intelligence reports confirm what Tanaka already knows from bitter experience. The M1 Garand can fire 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute. The Type 38 can fire 12 to 15. A single American rifleman has the firepower of 3 Japanese soldiers. A 12-man American patrol equals 36 Japanese in sustained fire. The mathematics of defeat are undeniable. The survivors of Tanaka's squad never fully recover. Not physically, wounds heal, even the bad ones, but something deeper. They know now what every Japanese soldier across the Pacific is learning. They're outgunned at the most fundamental level. The individual infantryman, the basic building block of any army, carries a weapon vastly inferior to his enemies. 2 weeks after the ambush, orders arrive for the surviving members of Tanaka's unit. They're being pulled back for reorganization, military euphemism for rebuilding from catastrophic losses. On the way to the rear area, they pass a supply depot. Tanaka sees crates marked with Japanese characters. Type 99 rifles, the newer model. Still bolt action, but 7.7mm instead of 6.5mm. Heavier bullet, more stopping power, still bolt action. He thinks about the sound of that bar, the wall of Garand fire. 20 rounds from one American to his 5. The math hasn't changed. The Type 99 might hit harder, but you still have to work that bolt between every shot. While the American fires 8 without pause. The ambush on August 14, 1943, was not exceptional. Similar engagements happened daily across the Pacific. Guadalcanal, New Guinea, the Solomons, later Saipan and Okinawa. Japanese forces consistently found themselves outgunned at the fundamental rifle level. American after-action reports noted it matter-of-factly. Enemy small arms fire insufficient to suppress advance. Japanese reports used different language, but said the same thing. Overwhelming enemy firepower. This wasn't about courage or training or tactical doctrine. Japanese soldiers were skilled, brave, fanatical when necessary. They'd proven themselves in China, in the Philippines, in Malaya. But across the Pacific, they faced an enemy who'd made a crucial decision before the war began. Equip every rifleman with a semi-automatic weapon. The M1 Garand, adopted in 1936, represented a fundamental shift in infantry combat. For the first time, the standard-issue rifle allowed a soldier to fire multiple aimed shots without removing his hands from the weapon, without breaking his sight picture, without working a bolt. 8 rounds, fired as fast as the trigger could be pulled. General George Patton would call it the greatest battle implement ever devised. He wasn't exaggerating. Beyond the statistics, beyond the after-action reports, there's a human toll harder to measure. Japanese soldiers knew they were outgunned. They understood the mathematics of their disadvantage. Yet doctrine demanded they fight anyway, often to the death. Surrender was forbidden. Retreat was disgrace. So they did what duty demanded. They charged into that wall of fire. The survivors, men like Tanaka, carried not just physical wounds, but the knowledge of fighting a losing battle from the start. Not because they lacked courage or skill, but because they carried 40-year-old bolt-action rifles against semi-automatics. Because their military leadership had prioritized spiritual strength over practical firepower. Because someone in Tokyo had decided the Type 38 was sufficient. It wasn't. By 1944, Japanese forces attempted to copy the Garand, producing the Type 4 rifle. They managed to manufacture 150 of them, 150 semi-automatic rifles for an army of millions. Too little, too late, too few. The American industrial machine had produced over 4 million Garands by then, with more rolling off assembly lines every day. Sergeant Tanaka survived the war. Barely. He was captured on Okinawa in 1945, one of the few Japanese soldiers to surrender rather than die. In prisoner interviews, he spoke about that ambush in 1943, about the sound of the Garands, about watching his men die, not because they fought poorly, but because they fought with inadequate weapons. He never went home to Hiroshima. The atomic bomb saw to that. His family, the ones in the photograph he carried, died in an instant of nuclear fire. Another kind of overwhelming firepower, another brutal lesson in America's industrial capacity for violence. The lesson of Bougainville and Guadalcanal and every other Pacific island was simple. In modern war, firepower matters. not just artillery or aircraft, but the weapon in every soldier's hands. The side that can put more rounds downrange faster has an overwhelming advantage. Spirit and training and courage matter, but they can't overcome a 3-to-1 deficit in rate of fire. The M1 Garand didn't win the Pacific War by itself. Air power did that, and naval superiority, and industrial capacity, and logistics, and a dozen other factors. But at the most basic level, one soldier facing another across a jungle clearing, the Garand represented a revolution in infantry combat. It allowed American soldiers to dominate firefights against opponents who, in terms of training and determination, were their equals. The Japanese military learned this lesson the hard way. One ambush at a time, one patrol at a time, one bloody island at a time. By the time they fully understood what they faced, it was too late. The bolt-action rifle, the Type 38 that had served for 40 years, had become obsolete. Not because it was a bad weapon, it was accurate, reliable, well-made, but because it required working a bolt between shots. And in the jungles of the Pacific, those 2 seconds between shots meant the difference between living and dying, between winning a firefight and being overwhelmed by 8 rounds before you could chamber your second. That sound, the crack of the Garand, the roar of the bar, became the soundtrack of American victory and Japanese defeat. Every soldier who heard it understood. The math was simple, terrible, and final. For men like Sergeant Tanaka, crawling away from another failed ambush, the understanding came too late but stayed forever. They'd been outgunned from the start. The brave died. The rest survived to fight another losing battle. And the rifles in their hands, those reliable bolt actions, became monuments to the gap between what war demanded and what their nation provided. The Americans called it firepower superiority. The Japanese called it hell.